guys, being part of the restaurant industry, not from the inside but from the outside, and my company provides gas solutions and gas banks for kitchens and restaurants and hotels and industries, etc. Specifically in restaurants, sometimes the kitchen and then what we do, the LPG system, is the most neglected part, and it comes at the end, and जहाँ पे थोड़ा जगह मिला, या they'll put the LPG cylinders. When we were thinking about this event a few months ago with some of the other people from the NRAI chapters, I really wanted to bring out what it means to build better kitchens, what it means to have a great functional kitchen for a restaurant that has to do well. The kitchen is a sacred place, it's a temple from where your food comes out, and I'm so glad and happy with the NRAI, National Restaurant Association of India, to open up this dialogue, have a stage, have a platform, give us the opportunity from all different perspectives on how kitchens could be made better for the growth of our restaurant industry across the country. Years of experience in the kitchen industry. I would now like to introduce our first guest and panelist, second generation kitchen planner himself. He's done tons of work in the kitchen design space, from brands like 145, Khyber, Theobroma, Indigo, of course, the most famous one, well known for. Guys, please put your hands together and a warm welcome to Mr. Naresh Shahani of BHS Design Studio on stage as our first panelist. He's also the one behind Busaba, Olive and Kala Ghoda Cafe, one of my favorite places in Bombay. Our next guest for the night is a chef, a woman, a powerful lady, the one behind Gigi, Laila. Her newest place in Pune, dressing room, is being talked about a lot in Pune. Mercy, as you've already heard, and the latest talk of town this side of Bombay, Scarlet House. Please put your hands together, guys, for Chef Beena Norona on stage. Welcome, Chef Beena. And our third guest for the night, a man who really needs no introduction in Bombay, but for those of you who still don't know him, let me just give you a little bit about his background. He's the one who's changed young Indians and young people like me the experience of what eating out and drinking out means, of what going out means. He's the man behind all your famous brands: Social, Mocha, Smokehouse Delhi, Bandra Bon, Bang, Mescalita, Boss Burgers, to name a few. With 80 restaurants currently running. Yes, you heard it right. 80 restaurants running in 20 cities of the country. Big round of applause and a big cheer for Riaz Amlani on stage. Riaz, welcome. But Bombay, we're in Bandra. You all can make some noise for the three guests here. Come on, yaar, make some noise. It's difficult to get here, guys, and we are all on time. We're starting right on time in Bombay, which is very, 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 very rare for an NRAI event. Yeah? No, we are on time. We are not late. We're 7 was 8 was networking, drinks, and then we start now. Right. So when I watched the podcast, I learned a lot about why not to open a restaurant.
Zorawar is a true ambassador.
But today we are here to talk about restaurants, of course. And for me, from my perspective, the most important aspect, the most important place inside a restaurant, which we all call as the kitchen. It's the heart of a restaurant. It's from where the food comes out and why people come back to your restaurant time and again. It's for your food. So, to open it up, Riaz, your first thoughts on, you're running 80 restaurants. 80. That's a lot of restaurants. And there are different concepts. Some of them more bar oriented, some of them speciality, some of them, we were talking backstage about how you have about 400 items on the menu at social and people still want more. How important is the kitchen for you? How much importance do you give? And how do you look at a kitchen when you first think about starting a restaurant at a place, planning a restaurant, and going to the drawing board? What's your first thoughts?
So, I can tell you what a kitchen is. There's inside a restaurant, there's a door where there's a printer, and you press on a computer what you want, and that kitchen magically produces it. That's what. And yeah. So for me, a kitchen is a place. Somebody call it the heart of the house, back of the house, whatever you want to call it. It's also a non-revenue generating area, and considering that and toilets, but you got to have toilets. Right. So it's a non-revenue generating area, and given the fact that rentals now par for the course is what, $500, 550 rupees without cam and scams like that. And with the GST, it lands up going to about 700 rupees a square foot. It's not like it used to be. I remember at one point of time, there used to be a mandate that the back of the house or the heart of the house has to be exactly 1/3. Am I right, Mr. Shaw? 1/3?
33%.
33%. Abra Jamana ma. Right? It was like that. And now it just becomes not financially viable to dedicate so much place. And again, depending on who is designing the restaurant, kitchens will change. If a chef is designing a restaurant, they want it to be a particular way because they understand the nuance of cooking and they understand the needs of the chef. As a restaurateur who just counts money, I don't care, right? I mean, the smaller the place is, the less people have to put in the kitchen, the faster the food comes out. That's what I'm looking at. So I think it should be small, okay? It should have less people. It should not catch fire. Smoke should not come out. And Mr. Shani said that it should also not get flooded. Yeah, it's going to be too much of a coincidence to catch fire and get flooded at the same time. That would be, yeah. So yeah, for me, it's as a restaurateur, and purely if I look at it from the point of economics and I look at it dispassionately, you want it to be small, you want it to be efficient, you want it to produce the products fast. I think it's getting more and more important, and we are seeing this, right? The faster you put food on the table, your sale goes up by that much amount of. You want your kitchens to be efficient. And weirdly, in my course of journey, we've built. We've operated a 100-cover restaurant from a 220-cover restaurant. We used to have a restaurant called Tasting Room, which operated purely on induction. It was not bigger than 110 square feet as a kitchen, and we were serving about 400, 500 people a day. It was one of my favorite restaurants, and we were able to pull that out from there. And then we opened up this restaurant called Smokehouse Room, where we had a 2,000 square foot kitchen for a 40-seater restaurant. And the food just took the longest time to come out. I don't know why. I can just tell you this as a data point. So yeah, that's going to be what a kitchen is. The magic door where food gets prepared and comes out from there, and it gets consumed in front of the house. Yeah.
That's exactly why we are here today. Because we want to know, from a restaurateur perspective, it's a magic door and food is coming out. And behind the magic door is Chef Beena, who's doing the magic and who's has a magic wand in her hand. Chef, you are the one inside. How do you feel first when you go inside a kitchen? What do you observe? What do you notice first? From a restaurant perspective, Ria said it that it's a place of magic. But you are the one who are doing the entire hard work inside. working long hours, and you're a woman, a chef, in a male-dominated, mostly male-dominated, I would say, industry. What are your first thoughts when you look at a kitchen, step inside a kitchen, and how much of importance is it for you to convey to the restaurateur that you're working with?
Well, firstly, it's not just me in the kitchen, it's my team in the kitchen. Team full of chefs, and they are the magicians, I'm not. Oh, really. And I feel there are a lot of things that need to work in a kitchen, because at the end of the day, it's an office space for us. Chefs who are cooking, we are being professional. Firstly, of course, it needs to be efficient, right? For a kitchen to be efficient, you need to have the right equipments. You need to have the right space. I won't say you need to have large spaces. You need to have spaces planned efficiently, designed to perfection. Hygiene is the most important, because I feel like kitchen is my temple. I'm creating. It needs to be clean at all times. If I'm cooking at home, I'm not peeling an onion and throwing the skin on the floor. I'm picking it up immediately, right? Anyone who's cooking at home. So why do that in the kitchen of a restaurant? So I feel like it needs to be spot on every time. Safety, most importantly, because chefs are working under pressure, hot conditions, fire, electricals, various other things that can put their life to risk. So that needs to be taken care of. That's important. And the most important for me is the morale, right? A good, positive, vibrant, great vibe place always keeps a person's morale really high. And if the morale is not high, they will not be cooking great dishes for you. Right. And if you're not going to cook great dishes for you, you're not going to come back to eat. And if you're not going to come back to eat, the restaurant is eventually going to shut down and we're going to all lose our jobs. So that's the most important thing. Yeah.
So, interestingly, you spoke about a kitchen has to be well designed, well planned. It doesn't need to be large or small. It just needs to be appropriate to the restaurant that's there. That's when we get our design guru, Naresh ji. From a restaurant perspective, from a chef perspective, the chef wants a great kitchen to cook. You heard from Riaz, the restaurateur wants to just give as little as space as possible to the kitchen because it's not revenue generating.
The only revenue generating space in the restaurant is the kitchen.
You know what that is?
That's exactly the dialogue we want to have here today. Right? So, Naresh ji, a restaurateur would come to you. This is the space. This is where we need to plan our restaurant. Front of house, back of house, so and so covers. Space is set, so many square feet available. And then you get some percentage of that to plan a kitchen, to plan back of the house. What brief do you get from a restaurateur for the first time when you get the first brief? And how and how do you compile that information and start your journey on the drawing board of designing the kitchen for that space?
Going back 40 years ago, when we were designing kitchens, space was never really a botheration to us. Of course, coming back to about 30 years ago, when we did Indigo and we did other restaurants in Mumbai, the space started becoming a constraint and costs and rentals started shooting up. This is around 1995 to 1999. Just started going up. And then it became a matter of how you can make that space efficient. As I was taught in England, that if you make an efficient bar, how many drinks per hour should a barman produce? And the same policy I applied in all my kitchens, that per square foot or per person working in the kitchen should not have to move much, yet work comfortably and efficiently by using efficiently designed equipment at the right location and the right position for the man to handle. So if he just turns around, he knows there's a tap over here with a hand wash sink. He knows in the bottom he's got his refrigeration. He knows that he's got his toppings in front of him. And he knows that he has to pick it up, then pass the food on to the person next door. So areas where you can't really get a spacious kitchen, you have to use space very, very, very micro efficiently. Micro efficiency. Here I don't design in inches, I design only in millimeters. So if I say that, if the fire brigade says 900 millimeters should be the gap, working gap between the cooking range and the back counters, I try to see that I can do it in 899. Now, if every equipment that you're putting in your kitchen is given a proper thought, do you need it really? Or you don't need it, or you have multiple use equipment. For example, I'm just doing a new restaurant, new kitchen actually, for an existing
What is the
restaurant.
brief that you got for that restaurant, the new one?
The new one was given to me that he should be able to, the chef should be able to produce every food. Whether it's Japanese, Indian, whether he has to make sandwiches, whether he has to make China, the Burmese food also coming out.
Riaz wants that only.
I don't want it. Our guests want it. If it were up to me, I'd stick to one cuisine, but that's not what guests want.
So getting something to be done, a kitchen can produce all these things, was a major challenge.
And
And
how much space to produce all this?
The
Was-
smallest that I've done up to now is Cafe Malido. 445 square feet was given to me.
That's giant. That's a restaurant.
For a 80 cover restaurant with a bar and a coffee bar, 2. All that is within 445 square feet. We have a prep section, we have a cold room, we have a pot wash area, we have got a dishwash area, you've got the main cooking ranges, and you've got all your bakery kind of products coming out from that kitchen, including a cold kitchen and a coffee bar in the front. If you go to Cafe Malido, right from the front to the end, it's purely 445 square feet.
The restaurant,
Restaurant.
not the kitchen. Or the kitchen.
The kitchen is 445 square feet, Riaz.
Oh my God, that's
I have to have 8 people working inside.
luxury.
Right. Without any compromising on compromise on the efficiency, hygiene, and giving proper prep areas which can be sanitized after every use. And in the time when the restaurant is operating, that area also multiplies as the staff food preparation and things like that. So giving that degree of efficiency was very tough, and it was built during COVID times. All the more reason and difficulty to get staff and to get people and contractors to do the job. Hence, it came out very well, and it also has staff toilet and the guest toilet also in 445 square feet. I forgot to do that.
Okay, now, yeah.
Now it makes sense?
Little bit.
Toilet needs to be bigger.
They'll never be happy. Anyway, so coming to the fact that such space utilization is actually a labor of love. The person who knows that if a chef has to work efficiently, he should be able to do the prep properly, keep it in adequate refrigeration at the right temperatures, and see that those equipment perform when the equipment is, the kitchen is on heat, means from the load outside. So that really made a lot of sense for me to help people out.
Right. I want to come to you, Chef, before we go back to Riaz. Nareshji spoke about layouts, 400 square feet, 500 square feet. For you, it's not something that you're measuring in millimeters or in square feet. You're looking at ease of operations, you're looking at ergonomics. Something that's very, very important for me personally, I feel, is kitchen temperatures. Very few people who are outside having their lunch or dinner and dining at a restaurant don't know the insides of the kitchen and how the restaurant outside and the back of house in the kitchen, how important is a kitchen temperature? For me, it's very important because you need to be very comfortable. You need to have nice kitchen temperatures. And in a place like Bombay where it's hot, humid, what's important for you, which is non-negotiable, when you set up a restaurant, talk to a restaurateur, work inside a kitchen? What are some things that are non-negotiables absolutely for you from a layout inside the kitchen perspective?
Non-negotiable would be if you say that you can't give me a workstation and expectation food, right? Of course. But when it comes to exhaust and fresh air, I think for me it was a very, like initially like 2 years back or something, it was a learning for me because being a woman, I'm sure I wouldn't know so much about an RPM, exhaust, motor, all these things, right? And inside the kitchen in Bombay, it was getting like really hot all the time. Even in December, it's really hot. Then I was just talking to somebody, one of the kitchen consultant, and I asked, why is it even hot in December, right? In the kitchen. So then we realized, oh, the motor size that was put for the exhaust or the fresh air system is far lower than what it should be for that size of the kitchen. And that's only because of the cost difference. So for me, see, it's not easy. Yes, chefs are used to working in hot conditions, but you don't want them to be, thinking about how uncomfortable they are while cooking and sweating while creating some great dishes, right? We are not expecting the kitchens to be air conditioned, but at least they should be able to breathe comfortably, breathe. And I've worked in kitchens where staff is falling sick because they're not able to breathe. I've seen that as well, so that's
a
not
reality.
negotiable. That's reality in a lot of kitchens.
Lack of oxygen, lack of
Yes.
fresh air.
Yes.
I just like to put in a point here. There were times when kitchens didn't have adequate fresh air supply as compared to the exhaust. The issue now has completely changed, and today we have certain regulations in our country which specifies that you are supposed to give comfort cooling in your kitchen. Now, how do you reach your temperature when the temperature outside is 38 and your kitchen is operating, the temperatures go as 45? How do you keep that under control? You need to put in something which is called as spot cooling. Spot cooling gives you, on the critical locations where the chefs are working, a controlled temperature air of around 22 to 24, so that when the chef is working in that hot location, he is kept comfortable. He won't sweat. And other areas where, the hot air is to be exhausted, we are mixing fresh air into the hot air and sucking it out in the right proportion. This way you can get a very comfortable working condition and everybody can concentrate on the work that they have been delegated.
Right.
So the efficiency of that person goes up by 50 to 70% as against a kitchen which is not properly ventilated.
Right. Riaz, Beena spoke about kitchen being comfortable, things like fresh air, temperatures. But these things also cost money. And from a restaurateur's perspective, there are a lot of decisions that you need to make. You need to put money on the table for something that you need, and sometimes you have your own decision-making authority where you can choose whether it's needed, not needed, why, how. There would have been times in your last 20 years you must have taken some decisions that the chefs wouldn't have liked. There would have been some decisions you would have taken in hindsight and retrospect and felt, yeah, I wish I did that. Anything that comes to your mind from your experience where you thought you could have perhaps put in that extra buck to make the chef inside the kitchen more comfortable, better, and give them a better working environment?
I can put in a spa if you like. No, but I have to be
Chef
honest.
Beena will be happy.
I have to be honest. I have not taken a single decision about the kitchen that my chefs like. So no, I'm just being harsh, but I'm playing the devil's advocate here amongst a chef and a kitchen designer, and I'm trying to bring the lens of the right, just the right amount where there's efficiency and there's minimal spend and there's minimal space, right? And I think as a restaurateur, you have to balance everybody, their expectations from, of course, you have your team. You would like a nice back of the house. You'd like to have, a luxurious changing room. You'd like to have a nice canteen for your staff to sit down and they're tired to have a meal. You'd like to have a little break area for your staff. But, and we've got to balance this with the realities of the modern day financial game. And you've got to balance this with, how it is going to cost you. And your costs are just going up, right? And everything is going up. So, we have to kind of be the devil's advocate in sometimes and be the, we can say yes or no. And it has happened. Like, for example, when we were building Bang, we created a display kitchen with an open pass, which is something which I personally don't like doing because of several reasons. Nobody likes to see a sweaty chef making your food, right? And sometimes, occasionally, you see a frying pan flying, across the room. You see some colorful language being used. It is, and forget Bombay. I mean, if you look at Delhi, where you are operating on those chat restaurants, I have personally seen temperatures getting to 55 degrees inside the kitchen. It is ridiculous. And yes, and I use the chefs as a cautionary tale, especially for the Gen Zs that now operate in our marketing offices, and we would like to work from home. What is this working condition? And we don't like this. I said, you spend like 1 week in the kitchen, and then you know what working conditions are. And it is a hard job. You're standing on your feet. You're in front of fire. It gets ridiculously hot sometimes. It is hard. But having said that, we really want to be that person. Obviously, you want better working conditions, but sometimes it's just not possible because the space doesn't allow it. The economics don't allow it. And you got to be able to balance several decisions to be able to run a financial business, because that's how you're going to be able to pay your bills. Otherwise, you will have everything best in class, and then if you do best in class sales, but you still can't meet the revenues that you need to do to keep yourself afloat. So it is a little bit of a balancing game that needs to be there. And like I said, I'm not an expert. I think of it as a magic door. My involvement in the kitchen is when I'm planning the layout, I take a pencil and draw out, and I say, this is the area which is allocated to the kitchen. This is the area which is dedicated to the back of the house. This is where I want the bar to be. Because for me, the layout is very, very important, right? And this is without Vastu consultants, because then that's another...
That's another subject.
Yeah, that's another thing that you have to negotiate. So then, the layout is very, very important. Sometimes the property itself does not allow you to have a certain area. And I think that's where really planning a kitchen really, really well, using good quality equipment, using, designing it in a very ergonomic sense, getting the CFM right becomes very important. And I think we have certain challenges now with the fire department not fully understanding what an open kitchen is. We're getting now import restrictions on imported equipment unless it doesn't have a Make in India tag. And this nonsense goes on, and I think that there's a lot of misstep between the regulations and where technology is reached. Fire protection systems, they've evolved to the next level, but we are still asking for very archaic processes. So there is a little bit of a mismatch. I think the restaurant's job is to somehow try and balance it out in the middle. And I would really love to understand now with the kitchen spaces changing. Revenues now, earlier we had this habit as restaurateurs, we throw people at a problem because labor is cheap, Why invest in a vegetable processor? 2 आदमी लगा दो काट देगा, क्या problem है? Dishwasher क्यों लगाना है? आदमी को लगा दो धो देगा. And there's several kind of processes like this that go on. I think that now with the new demands and new rentals coming in, how do we create spaces where we could minimize even the work people, because now chefs are no longer cheap. Now you can't just say ek aadmi aur dal do, because things are raising, going ahead. It's very difficult to get good quality trained people They're all going to the Gulf and on Carnival cruises, and yeah, we've become 1 out of 4 people in the working population in the world is an Indian, and therefore 1 out of 4 jobs around the world will be done by Indian. So we have become this employer. So things are going to get challenging. People are going to want to go away or get better paying jobs, or realize that standing on your feet for 12 hours in front of a fire which is at 45 degrees is not exactly good for your emotional health, right? Is that the word? Okay. And stuff like that. So we really need to kind of find ways, and we would love to hear more about how we can even get kitchens to be more efficient, how we can reduce space, how we can reduce manpower is something that we would like to know. And also, how do we deal with this growing demand where kitchens are also now doing a lot of delivery, right?
Yeah.
How do you create spaces where delivery is efficient? You have to now start planning for Zomato riders and Swiggy riders and that kind of a handover. These are also some things which are factors that about, and we'd love to know more about that.
I'd just like to stay with you here, since you said.
I deflected.
No. Since you said, you go into a restaurant, you decide no vastu, this is the kitchen, this is the front of house, this is the bar, etc., etc. Your scale of operations is massive. 80 restaurants, 20 cities. We're in Bombay. I want to talk about, problems in Bombay. There's restaurateurs in the room who are all from Bombay. And
From Pune as well?
of course, but since we are in Bombay and it's Mumbai chapter, I want to talk about problems which are specific to Bombay for some time. You would have cases where you have plenty of space in, a Delhi or a Pune or a Bangalore and Chennai. Of course, across the country, spaces are getting tighter, cramped, real estate is getting more and more expensive. But Bombay is next level, space constraints. Next level. It's not easy to run a restaurant by any ways or means in Bombay because there's red tapeism. There's fire people. There are people who are.
There are a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things going on, specifically in Bombay, that we've noticed. So, from your perspective, a restaurant in Bombay, a lot of your restaurants and new concepts are, starting from Bombay as well now. Cloud kitchens in Bombay versus some of the other places. How do you overcome those challenges which are in Bombay specifically?
I think these problems you can no longer say that they are unique only to Bombay. I think real estate prices across India have gone up. And if you look at prime real estate, even in a Dehradun or Indore or non-metro city, you'll find it being similar. Maybe not 700 rupees a square foot, but you will end up paying 500 rupees a square foot. And with revenue shares, which mall operators insist on charging, your cost of occupation is really, really shooting up. So it's not a problem which I would say is unique to Bombay. Yes, Bombay will kind of nudge you a little bit more to think about efficiency, to really think in millimeters, and that really becomes very, very important. Again, the problem also is challenges that you face in certain locations. A lot of properties are not designed to be restaurants. From in Bombay, you've got this Niche Dukan Upar Makan is a very is
And
a
the
thing which
Makan
is,
people are not happy with the restaurant also.
no, they hate
sometimes.
us. But then again, the compound with Gher liya, outside sitting here. But that is Bombay. We live cheek by jowl with everything. It's Four Seasons is next to slums. The Shadi halls next to Shamshans. That is Bombay. It is the way it works. You could come to Slink in Bardwal, you will know what I mean. So there are always going to be challenges getting cylinders to the back up and down. If you're on the second floor, first floor, oh my God, it's shattering it. At one point of time, we had given our guys one of these smartwatches, and they were like clocking 35,000 steps a day. It was
Wow.
ridiculous. So yeah, I think that there are these challenges. You are retrofitting a lot of places which are not designed to be restaurants. So there are challenges, and therefore you need to plan your corridor space. How do you align so that you minimize non-utilizable area, because that becomes a very important metric for us. So, and I would say that this is not unique to Bombay now. These are problems which are occurring everywhere now. Real estate is getting ridiculous, labor is getting ridiculous, and the discounts on platforms are getting ridiculous. So you're getting jammed from both sides.
All sides.
So while I might come across as a lotus-eating, non-sensitive restaurateur, but these are the challenges that a restaurateur will face.
Chef Bina, I want to, stay with you in Bombay. You've been in the kitchen in some of the most sought-after restaurants in Bombay recently. Each restaurant in Bombay would have a different challenge. There's a new restaurant that you've been associated with, where it's a old Portuguese bungalow, fully wooden structure. From a chef's perspective, how do you look at when you're working in the kitchen? Your day to day, like you said, it's an office for you. But you're also thinking about safety, you're thinking about hygiene, you're thinking about economics. Sometimes it's a scary thought for some, how it would be. And I know a lot of chefs who are young, they come in, they want to do they want to really show off their skills, but then they go inside and work into a actual running kitchen, they're like, this is not for me. So, from a perspective where you are coming from, at some of the most sought after places in Bombay, some experiences that you can talk about and how challenging they've been, how you've overcome them, and some good things, some bad things, it could be anything, but that's been sort of, now the place is getting more and more fancier by the day. What do you have to say about all these things, specifically from a Bombay context? Because I have seen restaurants in Bombay, jagah hai, le lo, restaurant. But it's difficult to do it. And it's more difficult to cook inside. Your thoughts?
Kitchens are definitely not getting fancier, right? But, yeah, I mean, see, again, efficient kitchens are based on the resources that you have. The resources could be the equipments, the kitchen setup, the people. At the end of the day, it's cooking. For me, it's just cooking, right? Whether you're cooking at home or you're cooking in the restaurant. Everything needs to be well planned. If you're having a party at home, you can't just decide tomorrow morning I'll wake up and decide and I'll cook something. You have to pre-plan everything. So, for example, in Scarlet House, it's the smallest kitchen I've ever seen. It's less than 200 square feet.
Wow.
Lesser. Maybe 150.
About an average size kitchen.
No. That's why I'm hardly in that kitchen ever. No, so what affects is, of course, we still churn out the food. There's a lot of chaos. What we then need to do is have longer shifts. So we have a team that comes at 6 rather than 10 for just no breakfast there's no breakfast. So we still have people coming and starting cooking at 6 because then that space is required for operations later. There is no separate prep area where you can continue to prep and the other chefs are cooking, right? I think
Smaller kitchen means more hours of working for chefs. And you have to pay them more.
yeah.
Shifts are the same.
They're
So
working more.
वो prep कर रहा है, वो सुबह में prep करेगा, शाम को prep करेगा.
I'm going to take Riaz with me to one of my kitchens.
Take him inside a kitchen.
Like I said, I'm going to play the devil's advocate now. You got to convince me
For
otherwise.
him, it's a magic room.
हो जाता है.
Yeah.
So I think managing people is the most challenging thing more than anything else. Everybody wants to work in a great kitchen, big kitchen, good ventilated kitchen with fire, great equipments. But then everything is not possible. So I think then the kind of caliber or the talent of chefs that I get under me to work in that kind of kitchen is also a big problem. Because then no chef wants to work in that kitchen.
Right.
And as a chef who's made the menu for that restaurant, it becomes even more difficult because then you have slightly different, I won't say not skilled, but differently skilled. Like they are poor in communicating, they won't talk. There'll be Bengali chefs, not from Bombay, who won't know any paperwork,
Right.
right? So they're great chefs, they're great cooks, but they're just bad with management and they're bad with paperwork.
Following
So-
recipes and things like that.
Yeah.
So how is the bigger kitchen going to solve this?
In bigger kitchens, you'll have IHM students, good chefs who are
Good chefs or IHM students?
IHM and good chefs, I would say both, right? Now, like if I want a chef who's working in Mask, he's not going to come and work in Scarlet House for sure. He's not. If he sees the kitchen, there's so many people when I hire someone for Scarlet, I tell them I like what you cooked or you starched for, but please go and see the kitchen first, and then tell me if you want to work here. So, unfortunately, because it's not, I won't say the owner said, oh, we will build a small kitchen. Unfortunately, the bungalow setting was such that that was the only space that could become a kitchen.
Wow.
And then with heritage properties, you have a lot more other problems. There's no fire, there's no proper water coming in Bandra. So, they have to have big tanks to store water, which is again a problem. So, yeah.
Even we get tanker water all the time. I mean, that's tanker water are the best friend.
Yeah.
So, good kitchen equals good chefs working inside the kitchen. Cramped kitchens equals, compromising with the quality of chefs.
Not always. I really pride in the team that's working in Scarlet. They're good chefs. It just takes a little more effort to boost their morale or train them and do things. It's just a little more work on my plate.
And they're working longer hours.
Not really. None
No?
of my chefs work
Okay.
more than 9 hours. So.
Oh, that's great.
May I just say that, look, when it comes to the size of the kitchen or the kind of quality of kitchen, you are restricted with the property. It's real estate. You can't help it sometimes, as much as you want it, right? And we've been through this gamut. We've tried these, putting cool spots and creating really nice back of the houses. Not why we still use quota in the kitchen, right? Why do we do that? We still use white tiled. Even if you go to a 5-star hotel, you'll still see open the service elevator, it'll all be quota floor. It is just the way it is. We try and minimize our costs over there, and we are doing this, and chefs are used to this. And the fact of the matter is this: you can do as nice a working environment as possible, as nice, okay? But at the end of the day, what matters to them is how much money they're getting into the pocket, because that's what's on the biggest thing on their head. You can do whatever you want, but if you don't pay your guy well, right? And who are these guys who come from these fancy restaurants who don't want to work in small kitchen? If you're passionate about your craft, I have seen great restaurants. You see 12-seater restaurants putting out amazing things from a 20-seater kitchen. I've seen bed and breakfasts which feed 80 people from 100. So yes, there's no end of there, and I'm not an advocate for saying you should not have good working conditions. But at the end of the day, you cannot, like I said, it's all about balance, right? So how do you get people to motivate them? And at the end of the day, they're going to work for money. That is the bottom line. It's not that they're going to stay with you because you created better working conditions. And I promise you, I've seen this 100 times. At the end of the day, they care about the money. And I'm not saying they don't have good working conditions. But at the end of the day, it boils down to money.
So money is a non-negotiable. Everyone is in the business for money, and the chefs are also working for money. So you have to pay them well. You have to pay them at the right time. That's given. But there's also something more to that. They're having a purpose. They're cooking for a brand, for a restaurant, for a purpose, and what they want to really do, what they really enjoy. Nareshji, being in Bombay for all those so many years, you are a true blue Mumbaikar. Your father been a veteran in this industry. some things in your experience would have been completely wacky and weird, where you talked about 400 square feet kitchen and you rammed so much. You must have seen great kitchens, you must have seen really bad kitchens in Bombay. If there was an audience here who are from Bombay or restaurateurs, what's those some things that you want to talk to them from a Bombay perspective, where they can maximize the space that they have and where they can make things better?
There are a lot of guidelines which I would like to share with everybody that you should look at before you take up any space to make a restaurant. Because the practicality of running a kitchen is far different than doing a nice decor of a restaurant. A kitchen is a live, throbbing space. It operates literally 24 hours a day. You will say, which kitchen works? It's your refrigeration which works 24 hours a day. Your drainage system must work perfectly. As compact the space is, the more costly it becomes to fit it out. The electrical supply that you get should be adequate for the equipment that you are putting in. Because today everything is turning to induction and things like that. Even your combi ovens and dishwashers are all taking a lot of power. Of course, they are coming down from 18 kilowatts to 15 to 13 to 11 and now 9. So selecting the right equipment for the right kitchen operations is a very important thing to consider while starting any restaurant. Now, kitchen's size depends upon the number of dishes and the variety of cuisines. Now, like Riaz would say, I want 400 dishes on the menu and want more later on also. So that may be possible and may not be possible. Because, with some twist you can change the dish and call this was one name and another name and then make another 400 list. But practically speaking, if you want to have hygiene, you want to have your food to be identified separately, you want each dish to be different. It's not that like I'm going to an Indian restaurant, he's got 6 gravies in front of him, he churns out the different dishes with just mixing the different gravies. It's not just that.
And you've seen restaurants from back in the day, decades ago, to the multi-cuisine restaurant trend to now specialty restaurants, and it's all going in that direction now.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
Kitchens are also changing in that way.
Absolutely. The kitchen has to change to suit the space and the cuisine and the number of dishes that you want to produce. As I was explaining earlier also, how one chef can produce X number of dishes in his 8-hour shift. How to make him more efficient. How to provide for all his requirements at a hand stretch. That is the secret of doing a proper kitchen. And therefore, coming down to an efficient kitchen for a restaurant, all aspects of the MEP must be considered. When I'm saying MEP, I'm talking of your mechanical works, your electrical, your plumbing, and your gas supply. There are ways of cutting down your costs. I mean, I do not want to air condition the whole kitchen. I may not be able to afford, sometimes like Riaz will say, don't give me this air conditioning unit which is giving spot cooling. There is new technology coming in and I'm updated of it. A lot of them and a lot of people in the market may be using it also. But that is, specialized fans and they have got specialized cooling pads. So in a city like Mumbai, it may not work very well. I can bring down the temperature, outside temperature 38 to down to maybe 29. But if you want 24, 26, which is the desired comfort, then I have to put a smaller air conditioning unit, which is called as a TFA, treated fresh air unit. So you get only treated fresh air at the special spots where the chefs are working. So in that small space that he has got, the chef has to produce and produce fast and produce the same quality again and again and again every day. So for that to happen, he must have a certain comfort level. If you expect a guy who's sweating in the morning, at 11 o'clock only he's sweating, how can he produce till 3 o'clock the same quality of dishes? So, considering all this, and of course being a Sindhi myself, I am very, very careful about the investment also. That has to be understood from the owner's point of view. That if he has to make money, I can't put in a 2 crore kitchen for him. It has to fit in within the norms, his pricing policy, the variety of dishes, and the market segment that we are attracting. Once I have understood that, any kind of a kitchen can be fitted in the space that he can give me. You know, I mean, I had a big scrap with Mr. Sudhir Bail's wife because I took 100 square feet more in a 5,000 square feet 145 on the first floor. She had a big scrap with me. Why are you giving this? I want to put my hookah bar there. Now, putting the hookah bar was okay. We put it. And at that time when it was being sanctioned, you know, that only water can be served over there and things like that. And he thought he could generate revenues. Of course, initially he did. But later on, the interest on hookahs dropped over there from 145. And my kitchen got suffocated a little bit because of that space that she took over. Now, these are actual things which are happening. But please understand, what a kitchen requires, you require. So, I mean, I had to compromise by putting one big walk-in. One side was partitioned for the kegs of beer, and part of it was sanctioned in a partition for the food. Now, how do you ensure that there is no cross-contamination? Cockroaches do come with your cakes. How do you do that?
So Naresh ji, before we take last thoughts from Riaz and Beena, sure, we'll take the question answers. Acha, question for him, huh? Yeah, sure.
Shani, of course, you know, when you have a very clear brief from a restaurateur whether he wants to do 4 cuisines or 5 cuisines or 6 cuisines, and while, you know, this trend briefly lasted of specialty foods, I think people are going back in larger restaurants to multi-cuisine restaurants because
Please repeating.
family restaurants, it's just it's cyclical and it will continue happening. You have a particular plan in your head about what you would like done, and you built a kitchen, you hired the best kitchen designer, you got the setting done, and then you find that X is not working and Y is working, or X is not working as much as Y. How do you retrospectively refit your kitchen or retool your kitchen to basically allow, because it is your customer or your guest is going to dictate what your restaurant is going to become. You can try whatever you want, but at the end of the day, if you want to survive, you have to listen to your guest, and the guest makes you what they want you to be, and you have to be flexible enough, you have to be humble enough to accept what the guest wants, and you have to put your ego outside the door. And I think that a lot of restaurateurs, chefs, artists refuse to do that. How do you then kind of, while the plane is flying, remodel the plane?
Remodeling a kitchen is, of course, one of the toughest jobs you can take up.
You can't shut down because
No, not shutting. I don't believe in shutting down because that shuts revenues. And that revenue is supporting the whole operation and all the staff who are working there. It is people like us who have to get down to, again, on the millimeter scale, plan the shifting of equipment, removal or replacement, depending upon the capacity requirement. Putting in the new equipment, maybe for a few days, restricting your menus along with the chef. Okay, we'll have a second range of dishes coming out. These 10 dishes will not be available. And working through the night to see that every replacement of whether it's an MEP change, electrical, plumbing, drainage, whatever has to be done is planned well in advance. All the equipment are ready on site first, maybe in another godown next door. And then all the works which have to be done have to be properly drawn out perfectly and given to your contractors. And then that's how it is changed. We just expanded the kitchen of Kalagoda Cafe about a year back. Now, we were expanding that kitchen from 250 square feet, going to 350 square feet. I changed that kitchen 3 times in 1 year because his business kept on increasing. Now, what do? Then finally we got little space at the back, which was his staff room. We combined it to the kitchen and made that our entire prep area. So totally we have only 400 square feet there. Huh? Now with that turnover, I mean, I'm sure you guys will understand that Kalagoda Cafe's turnover is not there. Despite so many restaurants opening next door, his business has not gone down. It's only gone like this. So now, if you planned it well, you detail it out well, you get your equipment ready. I mean, I changed him from a small tabletop oven to a 10-tray combi oven, not even 6-tray. And it has gone on so smoothly that he himself is amazed that it happened.
So planning is important.
No, but again, planning is important, but you don't always get the plan right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to revisit the plan also and then kind of make changes and alterations.
So before we go to Q&A, one last thing was on my mind to ask Chef Beena. Chef, inside a kitchen, we speak about safety, we speak about hygiene. Two things, safety and hygiene, very important inside a kitchen from chef's perspective. What do you do when you see cockroaches in the kitchen? Like, it's a reality, you can't help it. It's there. What do you do when there are clear safety hazards inside a kitchen? How do you navigate through that and still continue to keep working, not get affected by it? What's the feeling like? I want.
No, if there's someone here who's worked with me, they would know it's very simple. I just click a picture, put it on the group, get it done now. Pest control now. I keep following up till it's done. If there's any safety issue, I will follow up till it's done. So I'm sure, see, it also depends on each and every chef and what they prioritize in their working style. For me, I think the most important is hygiene, right? The restaurants I'm working in, the customers are paying big money to eat that kind of food, right? Yeah. It's not cheap, so I want to give them a good experience. And I think I've trained my team pretty well. So the vision that I have should transpire with my team as well. It's not like when I'm not in the kitchen, there should be cockroaches around. So they should always feel a chef can walk in anytime. So yeah, it's just you have to make things happen.
You have to call it out and follow.
Yeah, you have to. And I don't think if I'm going to put a picture of a cockroach on a core group of a restaurant where there are restaurateurs and investors, they're going to say, no, we will not do pest control because it's expensive. Because they also understand hygiene, right? I rarely think that would ever happen, right? At least I haven't worked in such restaurants. So.
Great. Right. Closing comment from you, Riaz, before we can take some questions. Quick Q&A. Do you still think it's a magic room?
It is a magic room. Where magicians work. It's a magic room. Yeah, let's go to Q&A.
Right. So, questions? Sure. Any questions from the audience?
Anurag ji.
Anurag ji.
Okay, I have one quick question for each one of you. So Riaz, very quickly, in an ideal world, when you're planning a casual dining restaurant, what is the ratio between kitchen and front of the house area you will keep? Simple.
I think
That you keep.
from an economical point, I think 20% is where I would go. So I have cut down 30% from the 33% that.
So in a 2,000 square feet restaurant, 400 square feet for kitchen.
हाँ.
Very rich.
आप अपना मेन्यू वैसे प्लान करो ना.
बिल्कुल,
हाँ,
बिल्कुल.
ठीक है.
Okay.
And listen, there's no end for now. There is an economic reality, and things have changed a lot. Okay, there's countless people now who are in the HoReCa business who are very happy to supply you with processed stuff. So there are certain processes that you can do in the kitchen. You should do. It's nice to do, and stuff that you don't need to do. Right?
No, I'm with you if
you
you
have
ask
to plan accordingly. In my opinion.
I'm with you. You know, honestly, gone are the days of 40% back of the house, 60% front of the
Doesn't
house.
work.
That's impossible in any city now. Chef, a very simple question to you. Now you are like, you know, you're working in a place where you are blessed with a smaller kitchen, let's say. Then what do you expect? What will you do? Will you cut down the menu size, or will you get more people to make sure you produce more dishes? What will be your choice?
I think it'll depend on the concept of the restaurant, right? If it's a multi-cuisine restaurant, I might have to bring in more staff and have more shifts. If it's a single cuisine restaurant, like if it's an Indian cuisine or maybe say just Italian, you can work around the same ingredients and create a menu, give more options. Or we could also go with the choice if the restaurateur is okay with a menu which has less options. I always work both ways, with the restaurateur as well as with my team. So.
Got it. No, I will down the menu or get more people in.
Crispier.
Okay, Naresh, final thing for you. Today, how much do you think an automation can help a kitchen, a smaller kitchen becoming more efficient? Of course, combined with other factors, lots of these ready-made products, food products coming in, processed food coming in. How much of automation can can automation help in bringing down the size of the kitchen?
I wouldn't call it automation. I would like to call it super efficient equipment, which can help to bring down the space. And these are new ways of working and the new equipment which have come out from Europe, which allows you to produce more food with a lesser number of people, number one. Number two, the automation can only bring you efficient production on its own. I mean, you can put a robot to do things, but those robo things are meant more for Chinese and other foods, where you just toss in everything and it comes out within 10 turns or something like that. But as such, automation, it helps in when you're doing chapatis being served to 20,000 people. But if you're saying that in one restaurant, which is a standalone outlet, to get automation to do things for you to produce food, it is still not really there.
Maybe not to produce food entirely, but to maybe improve efficiency.
I'll explain to you, there is some degree of automation which will help you to reduce your operating costs. Because today now the ventilation systems which have come out in the market, which are, varying motors, variable motors, which senses the amount of cooking ranges which are working, and it slows down the speed of the fan or increases it depending upon the load. That is one way automation will help your restaurant operate at a lower operating cost. But if you say that's going to reduce the number of manpower or the space for the equipment, no, that doesn't happen there. So still you need the human touch to produce the right quality of food, consistency and things like that. Chinese are working in a different way altogether because their style of cooking is different. Of course, in India today we still have the new automation coming in from Bangalore, those companies. Like we have a dosa maker, Dosa-matic. Now, one man cannot keep on producing one dosa in 1 minute.
Dosa printer.
So when you put in and all the dosa printer. So, but this is more reliable because it is not really printing, but it's a hot plate which is revolving and taking out dosas. And having two machines, today I had done for a ashram in Gujarat, where we put in two, the kitchens were handling about 20,000 people a day. But the kitchen stopped operating between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. And lot of devotees would come to that ashram and lunchtime 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and there was no food available for them. So we made a separate coffee shop with about 80 to 100 seats. And we did a very powerful counter where we had two dosa-matics. So, people don't want to have just an idli, but they said they can get a heavy, proper stuffed masala dosa. So such automation systems are still coming in. Automatic fryers are coming in, made in India, which are frying the product and coming out with the rising. So those sort of things are still moving fast, but not yet 100% reliable, I would say that.
Right. Yeah.
Hi Riaz, I'm just going a little offhand from the kitchen to the bar. You just said that, would you agree that the bar is the most revenue generating thing in a restaurant or bar?
Depends on what kind of restaurant it is, honestly speaking. If you have a cafe where people come for a glass of wine, or where it's quieter, people come to have a drink with their meal, it's a different kind of there are places.
Yeah,
there are proper
wines or
bars where
spirits.
I think some of the best bars in the world don't even serve you food. They're small 50 omakase style bars. They'll give you peanuts, or they'll give you some fancy masala on top of the peanuts and call it. So it all depends on the kind of restaurant you're running. So it can be both.
So when it comes to impresario, is it that you give equal importance to a bar and the kitchen, or is it more towards the bar or more towards the food?
So if you kind of think about, you look at ratios in a restaurant, right? You're typically in a cafe or which is slightly more food forward, which has a liquor license, you would hope to do 80-20, 80 being food, 20 being the bar. If you are kind of like a social, that's 50-50.
Yeah.
exactly 50-50.
Yeah.
But if it's 50-50, then in terms of sheer efficiency and the sheer amount of manpower that's required, then of course the bar wins. Because it needs less space, it needs less manpower, it's less labor intensive, it's less prep because you have to mix a drink. A lot of them now call themselves mixologists and liquid chefs, so
Yes.
I think now we can
Yes.
call it a liquid kitchen, perhaps.
Yeah, of course. Yes, yes. Thanks,
So,
Riaz. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think, but you know, that's the best part of restaurants. There's no one size fits all kind of solution.
And now
Thank
bars
you.
are coming up with coffee also in the bar.
Thank you. We have
What a revelation.
one last question before we open the floor. Bar, open the bar. Thanks to Ashbury Spirits.
Thank you for that.
Hi, Riaz, this question's to you. Have you ever considered having a fully electric kitchen, induction-based kitchen?
Yeah, many times.
uh,
Because otherwise it's not possible to have a kitchen because of
Is
fire
it
alarm.
commercially viable in India?
It's harder, it's not as efficient, it's not as quick, and of course it does put a risk. So you can't do walk, let's say, for example, I suppose. I mean, that is...
We
yeah,
have
no.
a walk by Gilly at Mercy,
okay,
and
maybe.
it's pretty
Great.
efficient.
Electric walk.
Electric work, yeah. Maybe I'm like I said, for me it's a door. So,
And the
but
cost-wise?
but induction, yeah, in some cases where you're just not allowed any gas, and it becomes a problem, then you have to work with electric and induction cooking.
So I can answer this question about the cost. Usually gas is 70% cheaper than electric, but also gas needs, because it's hot, it needs more fresh air, and your blower size in your suction of your fresh air has to be a little more stronger. So you're compensating a little bit, you're saving money with the fuel, but you might need a little bit of a bigger exhaust fan to pull the hot air out. And in an induction, you might be a little more expensive, not little bit, but quite a lot of fuel cost in terms of running on electric and induction versus gas. But you would need a smaller exhaust fan because it wouldn't make the kitchen that hot that gas would make. And that's what we've observed
Oh,
usually.
That's quite sweet of you to say that because
Yeah.
you're Pune gas. And,
No, so of course.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for Elon Musk to make this.
No, of course we are gas, and I think that in Indian cooking there is no way. It's extremely difficult in India to cook without gas because the chefs want gas, they want high heat, and we are feeding more than 1 billion people, right? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, there's always people who need food fast, and induction is a little slow process to sort of cook the food compared to gas. Gas is much quicker, much faster. And there are typical Indian foods like your dosas and biryanis and things like that, which can't be cooked on induction at all. I mean, we power Rameshwaram Cafe, and I've been inside the kitchen at Rameshwaram Cafe, and it's madness. If 1 minute gas is not there, it's like what happened at airports because of Indigo last week. That will happen at Rameshwaram Cafe. People will shout for their food. So gas is going to stay and remain. However, induction is future sort of could be currency where you could switch to induction if you have a chance. If you have a chance to, and it all depends on where you are. If you're in Bombay, induction can work. If sometimes in Bombay also induction will not work. Rameshwaram is opening in Bombay soon, and I'm sure they're going to not work on induction, they'll work on gas. So it all depends on your restaurant, your concept, and what food you're serving. So things are coming. There are advancements happening with induction, and hopefully the electric cost in our country comes down, but I don't see that happening.
Vinod
anytime in
Bhai,
the
we have a
future.
last question from you.
Last question.
Before
Thanks.
we
One more
open
lady.
up the
Riaz.
bar.
Yeah, one
Thanks,
more.
Riaz. So, I've
Sure,
been
yeah.
hearing this discussion, and I only have one simple question. Actually, long time back, Beena and I used to work together, and one of the differences we had, if you remember, was the kitchen, the flow of the kitchen. And as a foodpreneur who's putting in the money and maybe cooks a little bit, all these things that we've been talking about in terms of investment in kitchens is for brands that are invested in or have investors. What about the small-time guys like us who we are only all about jugaad. We buy second-hand equipment, we set up stuff, we do our flows of kitchen flows and staff flows. For every 2 staff that somebody else may use, we are using half a staff. How relevant is this particular whole concept of, I have a central kitchen, which I am very proud of, but I would love to actually introduce technology into it and reduce my dependence on manpower, which is becoming more difficult today than anything else in my business. So how does a kitchen actually use technology to be able to reduce manpower and my dependence on that, and yet keep my costs? My costs are the most important thing. I don't have money. I think most of us don't have money in the restaurant business. Riaz is different. He's a rich man. We are not. So how can you help us with a kitchen concept that actually works with low cost outlay and more technology in it?
I think we've covered a lot of those points today. But if you want to give that one gold nugget.
It's okay to work with second-hand equipments. I don't think we fought on that before. But I'm just saying that they need to be efficient. It needs to be planned well. They don't need to be big kitchens. In terms of technology, if you're saying to reduce your later operating cost, but you have to invest in that technology, you have to spend right now at least to have that benefit later. So yeah, I feel like if you have, like I said, the resources need to be right to run great kitchens. Your staff needs to be right. The kitchens need to be more logical and efficient, not the most expensive equipments. I'm not saying that. And the understanding between the restaurateur and the chef, the vision needs to be very clear.
Great. I think
for the way future.
Nareshji wants to add something to it. And Nareshji, your reply, and we can end with the famous line from your father that you quoted to me this morning. So,
just a quick suggestion for you. There's a technology in the world operating for the last 40 years. Of course, in India, is just slowly creeping into the hotels. It's called cook chill and cook freeze. So in your off-peak hours, your same staff does the prep, does the half-bake or half-cooking processes and freezes it. So you have good freezers vertical available, doesn't take up too much space, and you have a blast freezer which will freeze the product to -20 and keep it ready for you. The life is 6 months, maybe even a year, depending upon what is the product that you're freezing and keeping. And that makes your kitchen more efficient because it's ready to cook on the pan. So the various equipment which are available in the market, like a combi ovens which have got defrosting facilities in it, they defrost the product in minutes and it is ready to cook, fresh, juicy and tasty. So those technologies will definitely help you to save cost in labor. Instead of having laborers, your chefs hanging around outside and smoking and doing rubbish work, this sort of work can be done in those off-peak hours, and with the minimum space, you will get maximum efficiency.
Hi, good evening. Well, my name is Jasya. Well, my question to you is that as you are talking about the restaurant with the proper setups, big areas and all, so I have a cloud kitchen. It's in Andheri East, Marol Naka, and I'm into Lucknowi food. So we are like a 300 square feet cloud kitchen. So it's very difficult in today's time to compete with the restaurants, where we are giving a proper quality, where we are working on proper food, authentic cooking. When it comes to nihari, like 6 hours, biryani, proper dum. And then it's very difficult in today's time ki everybody's ordering from the restaurant, they're going there. So we really want your some feedback that how can we grow, what should we do, how can we work on the wastage part. These are the very basic important questions for cloud kitchen people, I could say that.
I think Riaz, you can take that. You have a Lucknowi brand, you have a cloud kitchen, kitchens running for certain brands and restaurants. So, you would like to take that?
Again, I'm not an expert on kitchens, and I have all the respect for dark kitchens and cloud kitchens because it's one of the toughest businesses in the food services business. It's really hard. So kudos for that. And I think a lot of the time that we are able to, shrink the dark kitchens is because there's a central commissary somewhere which is also supporting that. And Lucknowi Zaika to deg se aata hai, matlab it is like this. And it's really hard because that is something that you fully understand. So deg wala khana again, you know, is something that you may have to kind of create another alternative space where you do your major preparations and then use that space only for the finishing aspect. But वो तो आप ही को समझ में आएगा ज़्यादा better. But you are able to create efficiencies if you have some kind of back end. And if you're not able to do that, you can perhaps find somebody who's willing to do some pre-prep work for you so that space becomes a little bit more efficient. But again, I think this is Mr. Shani's expertise and not so much mine. But yeah, my food technology, pehle 80,000 years ago, somebody found a flint stone and then they came together, and now there are forensic companies making rotovacs and sous machines and kya nahi ban raha hai. Very precision stuff. It'll keep changing, but the main thing of cooking is fire and a lot of passion, and keep that alive, I think. Yeah.
Just a very simple solution for you. I know it is capital investment. So, as I was explaining, that in today's times, I mean, you go in Dubai and any of the countries, all of the kitchens are equipped with blast freezers and combi ovens. Now, combination of these two pieces of equipment can help you to prepare all your gravy items and your chicken or the meat or the vegetables to be prepared for the biryanis can be kept ready at the right to cook temperature inside refrigeration after they are blast frozen to the right temperature. And the second thing is to use combi ovens. For example, today Behrooz doesn't cook any of his biryanis using those patelas. Though of course people in Hyderabad and other cities in that area, they swear by it that they need their special flat bottom patelas to cook the biryanis. But the concept has changed. Today with combi ovens, you can be making veg on the top, you can have your meat in the middle, maybe even a seafood biryani coming in from the bottom. And depending upon your volumes, you select the right combi oven, maybe first brand new or second hand. You can pick up very good, because these equipment are all designed for 10 years lifespan. So somebody who has used 3 years, 4 years, and they're selling it out at half the price, it might be better for you to buy something like that. Test it with small quantities first, and then as your staff gets trained, you go in for the large big ovens, like we did for Kalagoda Cafe. Okay?
Right, guys. Thank you. Big round of applause for our panelists tonight. Thank you so much, NRAI Mumbai chapter. Over to you, Anant, Dhruvir, and Rachel.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Good evening once again. I'd like to thank our panelists and our moderator, Jaisal, Riaz Bhai, Chef, and Nareshji. Thank you so much for coming. And I'd like to thank our sponsors as well, Pune Gas.